Some truths, once unveiled, cannot be ignored. Hi, my name is Justine Donahue, and I'm a convert to Catholicism. I used to work full-time for a Protestant evangelical megachurch, and I absolutely loved it. But one day, my life changed forever. Here's what happened. I grew up in a wonderful Christian home, and we went to church and read our Bibles and attended Christian school. And I also started gymnastics from a very young age. I fell in love with the sport and went on to do it for 20 years of my life. At 16, I got baptized and I went on to join the gymnastics team in college. When I was in college, I met some wonderful mentors who helped me start my first ever Bible study on the gymnastics team. In spite of being a very imperfect leader of that Bible study, a few of those girls went on to get baptized. And this was my first experience of the fruits of sharing Jesus with another person and then watching their life go through a conversion. And it was so much fun. And although the enemy fought very hard for my life for many years, he only won some battles, but Jesus won the war. I graduated college and went straight into full-time ministry at this Protestant evangelical megachurch. I was surrounded by people who loved Jesus, faithfully served him, and the work that this church was doing was absolutely changing the world. I was so happy there, and I had plans of honestly probably being there forever. And then one day, my life changed forever. I met a stranger who asked me if I went to church, and I said yes. And I gave them my whole spiel about my megachurch that I loved very much, and I invited them to come attend my church. And then I said, "Do you go to church?" They told me they were Catholic because of the Eucharist, the Magisterium, and because they believed that Jesus Christ founded the Catholic Church. To say I was a little offended to hear someone say that they believed Jesus founded the Catholic Church is a bit of an understatement, and I was absolutely captivated that someone had the audacity or the confidence to be able to say such a statement. It was so absurd to me that it actually launched me into a journey of research, let alone I had never heard the words Eucharist or Magisterium in my life. I was Googling who founded the Baptist Church, who founded the Assembly of God Church, who founded the Evangelical Church, who founded the Pentecostal Church, the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church. It's not that I didn't know that the Reformers were Martin Luther or John Calvin or Zwingli, but I certainly had never thought of them as being the founders of my church before. I didn't really even know that I was a Protestant, and I certainly wouldn't have identified as that. I would have said I was an evangelical, Bible-believing Christian. But I was so captivated by this statement, Jesus Christ founded the Catholic Church, that I felt a moral obligation to look into it because it was such a massive statement. And although I was offended, I felt that it was really important. Well, this was the beginning, and I began researching and reading books and watching debates and asking questions and praying more than I ever had in my life. But at this point in the story, it was something that was nagging at me, but it wasn't yet in the front lines. And then one day, I heard that there was someone coming into town who was a theologian, and they were coming to host a conference in the city that I was living in. And this person went by the name of Dr. Scott Hahn. At this point in my story, I had read a couple of his books, and I knew enough to know that he was pretty special. Although I didn't agree yet with all of his theology, I did think it was a pretty incredible opportunity to come hear him speak. But there was a big problem. Because I worked at this Protestant evangelical megachurch, this was very public, and I was afraid to go to this Catholic conference, understandably. And so I decided that I would go, but I would keep a very low profile as I was working through some of these large theological questions. So I went to the conference and I sat in the back, and there were so many people there that I did feel pretty hidden. About halfway through the conference, I started to get pretty nervous because they weren't saying many things that I disagreed with. It was the dream team. It was Dr. Scott Hahn and Dr. John Bergsma, and it was incredible. During the lunch break of this conference, they had a library of books set up, and I decided that I was on a mission. I wanted to find a book about the one major thing about Catholicism that I felt like I needed to learn about. And at this point, that one major thing seemed to be the Eucharist. So I found a book about the Eucharist, and it was the biggest book that I could find, and I set my heart on researching this topic. But when I got up to the checkout, I found out that it was a little bit more expensive than I wanted it to be for my ministry salary at the time. And I decided that I was going to put the book back and try to find it for a cheaper price online. So I returned and I went to sit down in the back and I listened to the rest of the talks for the day. And it was life-changing. Now, earlier in the conference, they had passed around these donation cards. And because I grew up Protestant and we had put such an emphasis on the importance of tithing, I felt at the time that although I didn't entirely agree with these people's theology, I do know that they at least love Jesus. So I'm going to make a small donation and I'm going to write a note to Dr. Hahn. Very much so thinking that this note was going to stay between me and Dr. Hahn. Fast forward to the end of the conference, and Dr. Hahn comes up to the mic and is thanking everyone for being there, and he says that he has to catch a flight, but before he does, he wants to give away a book. He says the way he's going to do it is he's going to reach into a basket of these cards and he's going to pick one at random. So Dr. Hahn reaches into the bowl, picks out a card, opens it, leans over the mic, and he says, "My name." I was stunned. Now remember, I'm trying to keep a low profile, but my name has just been called and I have to walk down the aisle to go receive this book from Dr. Hahn. But he also decided to read what I wrote to him on the donation card to the whole audience. What I said was this: "Dear Dr. Hahn, I am a Protestant, but after today, not for long." And the whole church erupted in cheering, and I have to walk in the middle of all of it. And when I got to Dr. Hahn, he gave me the book and he gave me a hug and he said, "You made my day." This is the book. It's absolutely incredible. So after this encounter, I remember getting in my car and looking at the book on my passenger seat and thinking, Jesus, either you want me to read this book or that was a profoundly amazing coincidence. So after being a little shaken up by this experience and begging the Lord in prayer to reveal the truth to me about the Eucharist, this led me into this next stage of my conversion. I increased the amount of debates that I was watching between Protestants and Catholics and the books that I was reading, and I began to ask questions to Protestant pastors and to Catholic priests, and I was absolutely pouring my heart out in prayer over these large theological questions that I had. It was really starting to affect me that I could drive down one road and see a Pentecostal church and a Foursquare, an Assembly of God, and a Baptist, and a Lutheran, and a Calvinist, and a Catholic church all on the same street. All of these people were claiming to be Christian, but how did we know who was right? Now this started to build and I was going through lots of stages of this conversion. I was starting to realize that if Catholicism was true, it would cost me everything. And that if Catholicism was true, it was such a big deal that it would require of me my whole life. If the Eucharist was real, it would change everything. Mind you, at the time, I'm still happily working at this megachurch, and I am seeing the incredible work that we're doing for the world at this church. And I'm seeing all these people get baptized and give their lives to Jesus and join small groups and volunteer. And I'm seeing so much fruit over here in my Protestant church. And then when I go to Mass, it just seems like everyone is overly religious and they don't have like a personal relationship with Jesus. They're not on fire for the gospel. This was my perception at the time. And then there comes a point in my conversion when I stopped receiving Holy Communion at my Protestant church because I didn't yet feel comfortable receiving the cracker and the grape juice when I didn't yet know what I believed about the Eucharist. This to me felt like a big turning point in my conversion because I knew how important Holy Communion was. Fast forward, my prayers are getting more intense, more serious, and I'm beginning to be convinced that the theology of the Catholic Church truly is good, true, and beautiful. And I feel like I'm really at a crossroads. A fork in the road? A turning point? I had to make a decision. And as I was going through this, I shared it with the Protestant pastors that I was working for at the time, and I shared it with the Catholics. And the pastors who I was working for very graciously gave me time to go pray. And then I was invited to go attend a silent retreat that lasted for 5 days. A silent retreat is when you go turn off your phone. You go totally off the grid, turning off your phone and your computer, and you just seek the Lord's heart. You pray and you fast and you pray and you just do your best to seek the Lord's heart. So I went off to a mountain, and there was a very gracious Catholic priest who agreed to lead me in spiritual direction for the 5 days that I was there. At this silent retreat, I was spending probably an average of maybe 6 to 7 hours a day in Eucharistic adoration, and I was really reading almost nothing at the time. I was just sitting at the feet of Jesus, begging him to reveal his heart to me. It was a very intense and very intimate and very beautiful experience. And then that whole week, the priest who was leading my silent retreat was teaching me how to do Ignatian contemplative prayer. And so on the last day of my silent retreat, we were entering a time of Ignatian contemplative prayer. He invited the Holy Spirit in, and we did some Lectio Divina, and he just really believed that I was gonna hear from the Lord on this last day of my silent retreat. And so I followed his lead, and I closed my eyes, and I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, and nothing was happening. And I was just like, Father, I don't think it's happening. I don't think I'm gonna hear anything. And he just sat there with his eyes closed with a big smile on his face. Just so confident that I was gonna hear from the Lord. And I sat there and I kept waiting and I waited, and I don't know how much time went by, but then all of a sudden, I go into this Ignatian image in prayer. In this image, Jesus had put a blindfold on me, and he was behind me, and he was leading me. And you know when you have a blindfold on and then you're kind of just like feeling in front of you? Well, we're walking, and then I feel a door, and then we go through this door, and when we get inside, I decide to take off my blindfold. And I opened my eyes, and I saw that Jesus had led me through the door of a Catholic church. And I was disappointed. And so I decided to turn around and talk to Jesus and tell him he must have taken a wrong turn. And when I turned around, he wasn't there anymore. And I turned back around and I look down, and Jesus is standing on the altar. And I was like, Jesus, what are we doing here? And I start slowly walking down the aisle, and in this vision, there was a mass going on, but no one could see Jesus and I. We were just like invisible. So I get to a pew, and I like half-heartedly genuflect and make the sign of the cross because I didn't yet know if I fully believed in that. And I sit down and I looked at Jesus, and Jesus was just full of excitement and was so excited as if he was a little boy. And he became so excited to show me around the church. And he started showing me different things of the church. Whew, I might cry. And he went over to the red candle that every Catholic church has, and he says, "This means I'm here. I did this for you. Do you love it?" And then he ran over to the stained glass and he said, "I did this for you. I did this for you. These are stories from the Bible. Do you love it? I did this for you." And then he ran over to the statue of Mary and he said, "This isn't my mom. This is your mom. I did this for you. Do you love it?" And then he ran over to the Latin that was on the floor and he said, "This is what this means. I did this for you. Do you love it? Do you love it?" And then he ran over to the priest and he put his hands over top of the priest's hands And he said, I did this for you. Do you love it? And during the consecration, he put his hands over the priest's hands and he elevated the host and he looked at me and he said, I did this for you. I did this for you. Do you love it? Do you love it? And I sat there and I was like, Jesus, what do you mean you did this for me? I thought all of this was man-made. I thought the Catholic Church was man-made. I thought that man made the stained glass and all of the symbolism. What do you mean you did this for me? It was as if he was showing me around a gift that he was so proud of. But the image went on and I decided, well, Jesus, I need to show you something. And so in this Ignatian contemplative image, I decided to take Jesus to my Protestant church. And Jesus sat down and I said, Jesus, look at the lights. We did this for you. We did this for you. Do you love it? Do you love it? Jesus, look at the screens. We did this for you. Do you love it? Do you love it? Jesus, look at the theater seating. We did this for you. We did this for you. Do you love it? Do you love it? And he looked at me and he said, I love you. That silent retreat ended on a Saturday, and I resigned from my evangelical Protestant megachurch on Monday. It was an incredibly difficult process. Not to be dramatic, but it honestly felt like death, converting to Catholicism. I was losing my friends, my reputation, my career, certain relationships. It felt crushing, and at the time, I felt so misunderstood because there were so many people in my life who sincerely did not understand how I could convert to Catholicism, especially because I seemed to be like I was in love with Jesus before. It was scary and difficult and humbling, but in my heart, I knew, where else would I go? Because at this point in my journey, I realized that if just two things were true, then the truth about Catholicism would be real. One is Jesus truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist. Is the Eucharist actually real? And two is the magisterium truly established by Jesus and protected by the Holy Spirit. I often returned to the 4 questions found in the Baltimore Catechism, which is 1, does God exist? 2, is Jesus the Son of God? 3, did Jesus establish a church? And 4, did Jesus establish one church or many? And I knew that if I could answer these questions, then all of the other doctrine would fall into place. My beautiful mom used to teach me that prayer could be thought of as sitting at Jesus's feet. And there was one night in particular when I was in Eucharistic adoration, and it occurred to me that if the Catholics were right, if the Eucharist truly was real, this would be my one opportunity on this side of heaven to physically sit at Jesus's feet. If the Eucharist is true, it changes everything. G.K. Chesterton says that the difficulty in explaining why I am a Catholic is that there are 10,000 reasons, all amounting to one: that Catholicism is true. He also says non-Catholic Christian traditions are like the shallows. They have some truth, some depth, some water, but to become Catholic is to come to the well. And can I just tell you, this is exactly what it feels like. And although converting to Catholicism was horrendous, it honestly felt like death. Now that I'm on the other side of it, it is the best decision that I've ever made in my life. Becoming Catholic is the greatest gift that I have ever been given. Being able to receive Jesus in the Eucharist is the greatest gift that I've ever been given. I am now a graduate student studying Catholic theology, and I recently founded this project called Theology of Conversion, which exists to equip Catholics in drawing their Protestant friends home. Thank you for watching my conversion story, because some truths, once unveiled, cannot be ignored.
Your love is like hard medicine. There's nothing better than you, remedy when you're next to me. Or hard medicine. There's nothing better than